Welcome to episode 8 of A Drink with James. That is 2 months of this journey that we've been on together. And as promised last week, I'm not going to just tell you guys what to do with your businesses. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I've been into recently, some of the things I've been enjoying. So first thing, if you have met me in the last month, I've absolutely told you need to read Barbarian Days. I will extend that to everybody who's watching this. You don't even have to watch the rest of this video. Just shut it down, go out, buy Barbarian Days and read it. It will change the way you think about the way you live your life. At least it did for me. Secondly, I can't remember what secondly was. So let's skip number 2 and go to number 3, which is the song Smoke Break by Chance the Rapper, which I'm going to play for a minute here because I need a little more whiskey.
She wake up back at the door. She don't be cracking a smile. So when she packing the ball, I grab her, I tell her, let me crack this line. Slow it down for a second. Break it down. Ooh, she said, let me lick this line. Slow it down for...
Okay, enough of that. On to the real questions. So this is actually a big frustration for me, is that when I say what we do out at an event or a bar, people will be like, oh, they're just buying followers, right? Which is a huge misconception. It's actually 100% not true. Real quick history lesson. Year and a half or so ago, Instagram purged a bunch of their fake followers. Instagram itself as a platform lost 30% of their following because a lot of them were fake bots. Inside of 4Card, obviously we track all the analytics and the followers of all of our influencers, so we know everything. We know how many people are gaining, how many they're losing, all of that. Our community members on average lost 9% of their following, so substantially less than the platform average lost, right? And when we looked at the scope of beyond what was platform average, there was less than 2% of the community that it seemed like had bought a substantial part of their following. So the idea that influencers are buying their following and that's how they're growing is completely false and a huge misconception. So throw that out the window. But to the rest of the question, do brands care about more than just the following? 100%. I think if you asked that question a year ago, I would have said, not so much, following is really important, but marketers, brands, they're getting smarter and they need to find new people to work with. And so engagement and quality of content, the things you talk about and the vibe that you put out and the way your hair looks, all of these things have become more and more and more important as brands widen the scope of the types of influencers that they work with. So it's not just about followers anymore. We're seeing more and more of our influencers have 25,000, 30,000, 50,000 followers who are getting brand work, who have brands on 4Card reaching out to them, wanting to work with them. So that's a really exciting thing for people who are just starting out. So Snapchat, we've talked a good amount about Snapchat here. Hold on one second. And I think I've said in the past that as you're growing a platform, it is important to try and keep it as authentic as possible. Snapchat doesn't really have the technical ecosystem yet for brands to be able to activate with influencers inside of it, which is a fancy way of saying they don't know how many fucking followers you have, they don't know anything about engagement, and so it's tough for them to spend money. Unless you are specifically a Snapchat influencer and that is where your following is, I don't think that it's going to change the dollar amount that you're making vastly. So again, my advice would be focus on keeping that authentic, show behind the scenes from your life, be a little bit more real, be a little bit more relatable. Don't have everything be so pretty, cuss a little bit, drink a little bit, follow James Nord on Snapchat. All of these things are basic advice that I would give you. And if you do want to work with a brand, then just work with the brands that you really love, that you would talk about anyway. I wouldn't look to make a bunch of money off of it, but I would keep really curated the types of brands that you're working with on Snapchat right now. Short answer is yes. The long answer is depends on what you want. So, there's this really great story I love about this photographer who I look up to, who's incredible, and has shot, he was a fashion photographer, he's done sports, he's very talented, and I'm not gonna give his name away because I don't want to tell his story, but I asked him what's his dream job, and he said his dream job was working with Nike. He wanted to shoot for Nike proper, for the entire brand. And having been in the industry, he had been in the industry for 30 years, I was surprised that Nike had never reached out, if that was his goal. And he said, no, like Nike Golf, Nike Running, Nike Basketball, all these sub-brands had reached out to him, but he had said no across the board, because if you worked with one of those brands, you weren't gonna get the big Nike gig. So he was waiting. And so I would say the same for you. It depends on what the goals are for your career. If you wanna work with Chanel, and that's the end goal, is that like you wanna be sitting front row at a Chanel show in Paris, then I would suggest that you don't work with their competitors. You don't, go out and be in, work with Dior or Louis Vuitton. If you just want to do cool stuff and work with amazing brands, then like, does it matter that much? A little bit, but it's not going to make or break you. So it just depends on what your goals are. And I would also stress that, when brands pay you to work with them, there is a certain expectation. And I think that you have to remember, especially those brands that were there for you in the beginning. I know back when I was shooting more, I did a bunch of stuff with Puma, and Puma had sent me to Abu Dhabi and to Brazil and somewhere else, and I had done all this really great work with them. And like 6 months after that, Nike reached out and they wanted me to come out to Portland and visit them and do some work with them, but I had to decline because Puma found me when I was a nobody and nobody cared about me and no brands wanted to work with me, and I felt like that deserved the respect of not then jumping to their biggest competitor, who they were trying to undercut by doing something innovative and different by working with influencers before brands were working with influencers, really. So I encourage you to think about that as well. Remember where your loyalties lie, and don't forget the people that were there for you in the beginning. My mother, who's an absolute gem, always tells me that you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. So if people helped you get to there, try not to go out and work with their biggest competitor after they've helped you gain a following and get to the place that you are. That would be my advice. So there's also questions about like, yes, if I work with a mass brand, will I be able to work with luxury brands? Like, absolutely. We have a lot of top tier influencers who are working with Old Navy every month on like a monthly basis, and then they're sitting front row at Balenciaga. Like, that can work, and brands understand that. And working with a mass brand, Forever 21 or an Old Navy or a Gap, absolutely does not stop you from then working with a Louis Vuitton or a Chanel or a Balenciaga. They get more finicky or more particular when it's inside their category and it's their direct competitors. I think that's it, which is probably good news for y'all, but bad news for me because today I poured some scotch, and at the end of every video I just drink what's in my glass. So I'm gonna have to do a very large shot of scotch now. Cheers.